We're walking and talking with the mind. It is stay on. Oh, walking and talking with the mind.
And today in Monroe, Georgia, a march to commemorate the event that awoke Dr. King and his life's calling.
Yeah, it began with a terrible event 71 years ago at a place called Moores Ford. It's a horrific crime that has remained unsolved to this day. Tonight, CBS 46's Keith Whitney has more on this pivotal event at the Moores Ford Bridge.
The journey to justice can be a long and unforgiving road that never seems to end. You can find such a road here in Monroe, Georgia, that stretches more than 70 years back in time to the massacre on the Moores Ford Bridge, where 4 African Americans were lynched for voting.
He brought them here to the Moores Ford Bridge and delivered them to over 200 mobsters in the Ku Klux Klan. They were all over this area. 200 people in the Ku Klux Klan and other racist hate groups.
The victims were 2 married couples, the Dorseys and the Malcolms. Dorothy Malcolm was 7 months pregnant.
And they snatched him out of the car, they beat him, they shot him, and they lynched him right here at the Moores Ford Bridge.
Every year, civil rights activist Tyrone Brooks comes back to this place to stage marches and reenactments of the atrocity.
He said for many, many years, the rope remained up in the trees as a warning signal to the African-American community to stay away from the polls, to stay out of the civil rights movement, to stop your marches, stop your picketing.
But the brutality had the opposite effect on a young college student at Morehouse.
It was one of the most brutal, horrific stories of that era. It was the last open public mass lynching in America that remains unsolved. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was so outraged. As a 17-year-old student at Morehouse College, he began to write letters to the president, members of Congress, law enforcement, the media.
The president listened, but J. Edgar Hoover's FBI did little to find the truth. Brooks says King remained haunted by Moores Ford all his life, and ironically was headed here the very night he was killed. Brooks waited at the airport for the plane that never came.
And I heard Walter Cronkite say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is dead." Keith, I began to cry like a baby. I mean, I was just uncontrollable crying.
Brooks says many years later, an anonymous law enforcement source told him that James Earl Ray had stopped in Walton County to meet with members of the Dixie Mafia, who may have been part of the killing crew that murdered King.
We never knew that James Earl Ray made a visit to Walton County in 1968, just as we had left going to Memphis. He comes in through Georgia, and he comes through Atlanta, and he goes through Social Circle Monroe.
Keith Whitney, CBS 46 News.
We wanted to come and show our support and solidarity wherever injustice is. As Martin Luther King said, if it's done to one, it's done to all.
And today was a solemn day for folks who gathered here for today's march to commemorate the Moores Ford Bridge lynching. Holding signs, also singing songs, a small group walked a few miles to the spot where the bridge once stood. Many say they believe justice will eventually come to the criminals who were responsible for those killings.